That's a lot better. Those other ones are too strong anyway. If I look, if I'm not reading, it'll just make me about fall over. Catfish Hooker says he's so excited. That's awesome.
What's up, guys? Josiah. Listening while packing. What are you packing? Getting ready to take your flight to Nebraska?
All right, so what are we going to talk about first?
All right. Well, we got 12 people in here so far. All right, guys. Topics
Oh,
tonight is going to be covering the summertime lull in the middle of July when it's hard to catch a bite and new waters. What do you guys want to talk about first? Water or how to catch a fish in the summer?
are you asking me?
Ask the chat real quick.
I would skip the July thing altogether because I'll tell you exactly what I do in July. I do a bunch of work in July because the half the flathead population is on eggs, the other half really is kind of spread out. It's just not one of those great times of year where we're at, and I'm suspecting it's kind of like that where you fish too.
Yeah, July for us is tough.
Yeah,
You can still catch the channels, but trying to catch those flats or anything of size is really really tough here.
yeah.
So Andrews says July. Let's Tim. Let's start off with covering new waters here.
All right. So of course, I am a diehard monster hunter, so I don't normally choose a whole lot of water that doesn't have like really really big fish. But let me go back a ways when I didn't know the difference because really it is very difficult to stay on monster type waters anywhere close to home
Right.
because I mean, and you and I were talking the other night. I have to travel 4 hours to blue cat water that I could expect to reasonably be able to tackle into an 80 plus. Okay. Now I can go 3 hours and I can reasonably expect to tackle into a 40 or a 50. But that 80 plus is 4.5 hours away and an entire weekend thing. It's not something you just jump in your truck and go, hey, we're gonna tow the boat down and fish the afternoon and come back. I mean,
Right.
it's a full commitment. So, um, but before I knew the difference between waters that held giants and didn't hold giants, I was fishing anywhere from an hour to hour and 15 minutes away. And there's nothing wrong with that because there's a lot of people across the country. I mean, they're 10, 12, 14 hours away from a reasonable shot at an 80. Uh, uh, and and honestly, at one time a 25-pound fish was big for me, so I was pretty excited about it. So when you're fishing new waters, a long time ago, and this is kind of a long drawn out story, but I'll try to condense it as hard as I can. I mean, shoot, when I was probably 18, 19, 20, I was still ate up with the big catfish thing. Don't get me wrong. So I would drive 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and even when I was like 17 or 18, my parents would be like, "Well, when are you gonna be back?" Well, I don't know. Where are you going? Well, I don't know that either. So, I had a map, which, now you can get all that stuff on the internet. But back in those days, I had what's called a gazetteer, and that's when they first came out. And if have you ever seen one?
Mm-hmm.
They're these gigantic, big book type maps, and it
Yep.
shows all the boat launches and all the
Yep.
whatever. It wouldn't tell you where the big fish were, but you just had to kind of figure that out for yourself. But so I started looking, and when I was real young, I didn't know the difference. I was just fishing. I was just throwing it in. And I ended up fishing a lot of carp and gar water, if you get what I mean. You go to a big river and you find a decent spot you can fish off the shore or launch the boat or whatever. And I chose things based on comfortability. If it was windy, I wanted to be out in the wind. If it was too hot, I wanted to be in the wind. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I didn't have that all dialed in, and little did I. And this would be a really long story to get onto how I figured out that catfish, they don't care about what you think. They're doing what they do.
Yep.
So I really had to figure that out before I became successful. But now, if you fast forward into this, information age of social media and things like that, most people have kind of figured out that you can't just go to the shallow slack waters and throw some rods in and expect to catch something of note. Okay, you can expect to catch something, but what it's going to be, you just don't know. So once I figured that out, I would start to look at maps, and this still applies today. I would look at a map, and especially if when I was shorebound, I would try to find a spot that you could see by the topographical that was as close to the main channel as possible. Okay, so as far as a shore spot, I would find a neck down. I would find where the channel swung completely close to the bank instead of being like a large shallow flat, and then finally going. And then I uh, tackled up as far as bought some 12 and 14-foot rods, bought some stuff that was more castable, started getting bigger sinkers and stuff like that, so I could actually reach the fish. And kind of how I found out about it is I I was enrolled in my first year of college at Illinois Central College, which was a junior college, because I was the self-funded college guy. So I wasn't just going straight up to the 4-year college. I need to get that stuff out of the way while it was still cheap. So anyway, I had my first year. I had like a 4-hour kind of lull because they only offered a couple classes in the morning and a couple classes in the evening. So I had a 4-hour afternoon. Kind of so I went because they only offered a couple classes in the morning that I could find. I'd bring my stuff, bring the bait, do all that, have a cast net, and I'd come down to the river. Well, the Illinois River, if you know anything about it, it's got a narrow main channel and it's got lots of flats. So I was throwing and throwing and throwing and throwing and throwing, expecting to catch catfish. Well, that was before I really knew what exactly was going on. And so then, I mean, it's a big river with barges and everything. So I started to wade the thing. And so I waded out and I had to wade out 100 yards and then stand up into my neck and hold rods like this. But as soon as I threw them into the main channel, it was on. I mean, it was like clockwork. And so I got some sort of lawn chair out and figured out a situation where it wasn't quite up to my neck, and I would wait, just walk out there every day, and I would catch channel cats, and then I'd go back to class, and girls in my class would say, "What is that on your thumb? What's all that shiny stuff?" I'm like, shad scales,
Shad glitter.
shad glitter. And they'd be like, "Oh, it's on your tooth too." Yeah, I must have scratched my tooth, whatever. Got some on your ear.
Yep.
What's that smell? What is that smell? I'm like, well, I was catfishing this afternoon. But anyway, it still applies that you can look at a map, find where the the topographical lines are very close. It's got a steeper bank, which puts you into the main channel, which also leads us to what we were talking about before, and that is, what do you do in July in the dog days when they're done with spawn, they've spread out, and blah blah blah. I mean, and one of the best things to do is go to a channel ledge and target that, because channel cats, they're done with their spawn, they went deep and spread out. Flatheads, if the water becomes low and there's no current on all the snags and cover, they'll go back to the main channel as well. Now, they're not going to just run around like channel cats or blues, but you could still get lucky and, hit some on the deep ledge.
Yeah. So as far as when you when you're in a boat, that covers it covers bank fishing pretty well.
Sure.
When
Sure.
you're in a boat and
Yep.
you're to say these guys, they're a weekend warrior, they're travel
Yep.
fishing, they want to go try a new lake. You pull up your topo map. What when you pull up a topo map for a new lake, what are you personally? What do you look for on a map based on the time of year? Um, what are you looking for on there to target these fish, whether it be eater sized channels or flatheads or even trophy sized blues? What
Right.
do you see on those maps that make you decide where to take on first?
First and foremost, I should put a disclaimer out. I am not a lake guy. I have fished lakes and I have been successful on lakes, but I'm really not the guy to ask anything like, how do you go and consistently catch monsters on lakes? Because honestly, I lakes are very very difficult to consistently catch a range of big fish. Now, if you want to go and catch fish, that's one thing. But if you want to go and see, and I'm always thinking in that mantra, if if you understand what I'm saying. So I very rarely go out to just catch fish. If I'm going for channel cats, I want to catch the top of the mark. If I'm going for flatheads, I'm looking for 50 plus. If I'm going for, channel cats like before, I'm looking for 10 plus, 10, 15, 16, 18, 20 in my area. And when I'm going for blues, I'm really looking for 70 to 130. So, but if I'm just out there to catch fish and I want to target fish on lakes, I'm going to have to pay attention to a few things that I don't pay attention to on rivers. And let me back up a little bit. So the equation for catching or contacting good fish that I figured out about 20 years ago, 20, 25 years ago, was current first, depth second, cover third. So that's the three tiers. So, depending on what catfish you're looking for, because all three catfish prefer a different speed of current, so it's still current first. They can be present without very much depth. They can be present without very much cover. But the current, if you lose the current, they're usually not present, except for when we're talking about blues in lakes or fish in lakes, because you don't have current. So if you're talking about lakes, you just have to erase that part of the first part, which you would use in rivers, and focus on the second, third, and then you have to add a fourth, which is bait fish. In rivers, I don't even pay attention to bait fish, and I'll tell you why. Uh, for years, I bought into the magazine thing, to where you say, find the bait, find the fish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in rivers, there could be a million shad in a backwater. There could be a million shad in a gravel pit that's attached. There'd be a bazillion this or that, and there isn't a catfish worthy of note at all in the entire area. But just down the slope into the current is where they're at. Now, they're close, or maybe not even that. Because you get into a backwater, it's got a big, large, shallow flat before it actually gets to the bait fish.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasted a whole lot of time. All I needed to do was go 100 yards on the other side into the main current, or into the drop offs, or into the ledges, and there's your catfish. So I spent time in bullhead and carp and gar water. There was all kinds of shad back there. But that whole, and that's one of the reasons why I became a writer. I wrote for North American Fisherman for several years, and it was because I would read these articles, and the articles, once I tried to put it into practice, were full of just humanistic thinking and fairy tales, and you could tell it wasn't one of those things that worked consistently. It just didn't work consistently.
Right.
Almost none of those articles do. Now, you'll get onto a few, but if they can't describe current, which they don't, I've had writers in my boat writing about what I do, and I teach them how to focus on current, cover, and depth, to find big flatheads consistently. And the article comes out and it's terrible. They mention current a little bit, but they don't know how to describe it. They don't know how to focus on it because it is the main focus. It's absolutely the main focus, except for if you're in lakes. So, and I look at it like I like to look at the root situation. The root situation is that channel cats, flatheads, and blues are native of the Mississippi River and its tributaries. Okay, all other lakes, everything else it's a man-made plant. Everything, unless it was from the Mississippi River drainage, from the Alleghenies to the Rockies, it all stems from there. And then everything else, every municipal lake, every Corps of Engineer lake, every single any of that stuff, they were all stocked. And so I like to just kind of look at it scientifically through a generational behavior because catfish are not smart. What's up, Greenwell? Uh, they they're not smart. They know pretty much everything that they were ever going to know the second they were born. Now, channel cats will learn a little bit more because they're actually the smartest out of the three, which I know that'll kind of irritate some people because a lot of people are like, "Oh, those channel rats." Yeah, let me turn this light off.
They'll eat frickin' anything.
Yeah, and they'll eat anything. Well, they won't, and they will. And see, fish in lakes have no. They act a little bit different because food never, it hardly ever comes to them. Whereas in a river, catfish are inherently designed to hold real estate in which food intersects with where they live. Okay. Well, that doesn't happen in lakes. So lakes are all an artificial thing and it creates behaviors that aren't natural to them, but they have no choice.
Right.
So that is a bait killers. Yeah, yeah. And Andrew, the one thing, if you are fishing an area for flatheads with your nice live baits and you're getting them killed by channel cats, it usually means there's not any active flatheads around. That's one thing, and I've been through that whole thing. I know, but now since I have a milk run in which I've established, flathead habitat that they basically comprise that all year round, all the time. I don't hardly ever get bit by channel cats anymore, but that takes a while to formulate. But
Right.
anyway, for river channel cat best fight, pound for pound, absolutely, I believe that, and I've spoken about this before. It's because of the way they swim, and if you look at the hydrodynamics and the actual physics of it, channel cats have an S-shaped swim. Blues paddle tail, okay, and flatheads swim like this, like a whale shark. Head goes one way, tail goes the other. But a channel cat, if the head goes one way a little bit, their whole body swims like an S. And yeah, they are pound for pound the most powerful. Now, I enjoy the fight on a flathead, a blue, and a channel cat, perspectively. But one of my favorites is a blue cat that is so big its head is as wide as a 50, 60, 70 pound flathead. That's what I like because there's almost no, it's almost like a flathead. When sorry, I'm gonna have to back way up. When the head is this wide, when it's as wide as my shoulders are, that is like that super pull down, but yet they're faster than a flathead. You automatically you don't have a flathead, you know, but it's fighting like a flathead, and blues don't really get to that until they're about 80 pounds, and I get really excited about that. But let's get back to what to do on a river if you're just trying to go catch some sort of fish. You want to find an indigenous type of bait fish, whether it's shad, whether it's bluegill, whether it's whatever. I mean, blues are fairly agreeable when it comes to that. I mean, shoot, people catch them on hot dogs, they catch them on chicken, they catch them on shrimp, they catch. And you know what? One of the and I keep telling YouTube guys this: current or pockets. We'll get to that here in a second. That's actually a good question. Um, So calamari, I used to do really well on calamari when I didn't have time to go, get on the boat and do the cast net or whatever. I would use calamari, and it works for channel cats and blues like nobody's business. What's up, Ripping Lips? So okay, so let's talk about current or pockets. If you guys watch my YouTube stuff, sorry, not my YouTube stuff, my TikTok stuff, almost none of those giant fish you see me catching is coming from a slow water pocket. I don't. I'm of the opinion that there is almost. Well, I have not seen water too fast for a giant blue cat. I've seen water that's too fast for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 pounders. But 60, 80, 90, 100 pound blue, they're so hydrodynamic. If you look at their body shape, from the front to the back, they actually come up and then so that they're almost like a hydrofoil. You know what a hydrofoil is? It's bulbous on the one end and it's slenders like this. And it's probably no mistake that a blue cat likes the fastest current out of the three catfish because they're so hydrodynamically based. I do not imagine that a big blue with its good silhouette has hardly any problem propelling forward. And to me, I look at blues less as swimmers and more of like flying. If you look at it, because they're this is a weird format for me because it's so narrow. I'm so used to
Right.
wide narrow, so I just start using my hands and doing all that stuff. I gotta back way up, but their pectoral fins, they just they just actuate down to create lift. They actuate up to drive them down like this. But basically, they can just kind of paddle tail, and because of that water goes up and over, I believe it creates enough push in fast current that they don't have a problem. And so, and Rip and Lip says shallow water, deep water. I like to focus on big blues in their close to their more natural habitat in pretty deep water. I mean, not always. And geez, I see Sean's in here cracking it up. What up, heroes? So, uh, so generally speaking, um, I believe that there's no water too fast that I've ever fished, and I've fished some of the fastest water I've ever seen, even on video. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 mile an hour current.
Right.
Now, usually there is a little bit slower water along the bottom. So what you see on top is super rushing, and you can tell when you throw your baits, and it's got pressure, and by the time it hits the bottom, or it gets close, it starts letting up a little bit because there's friction along the bottom. So you got hydrodynamic wise, you've got that water that's free flowing, it's really fast, and that stuff along the bottom, even if it's just got little bumps. Yeah. Slower. But it is a little bit slow. But I don't really worry about that. Which brings me back to when you're talking about July. When I used to go in July a lot, my successful days was basically just finding current. So you go down river, and you get the wide stretches. They're kind of relatively slow. I just start focusing on the narrow downs, and usually you were going to find fish there somewhere.
So let's say I'm gonna travel fish this weekend, and I'm gonna go target below, on a river below a head gates. Obviously, you say current is number one, and then depth, then cover, then bait.
Right, but in
if
cold water,
number one, is there a sweet spot on how far back off of a head gates that people should fish?
No. A lot of times, some of the biggest fish are tucked up so tight you can't even get to them. Honestly, I mean, there's a couple of dams on the Mississippi River which you're allowed to get close enough that you can throw upstream. You're snagged every single time, but I mean, you can almost hit the gates at these things with like a 12-foot rod. And I used to do it. It's not really that fun for me anymore because I don't really catch super giants, but 40s and 50s, you catch them one after the other.
And you'll get that in a little bit.
What's that?
Andrew asked how we get to flatheads in shallow rivers. I told him we'll get to that here in just a little bit.
Yep. Just remind me because I tend to run amok. But anyway, if anybody that's in chat is familiar with Winfield Dam, you can get up pretty close to Winfield and throw upstream. Now you throw downstream, you don't hardly catch anything because the topography is a little bit different. It's like a little bit shallower into the dam because of course it's based on bedrock. And so you throw into Winfield, that's where the fish are. Behind you, the water starts to kind of dribble down into a 60-foot kind of slack water hole. There isn't hardly any active fish there. So you have to get up there tight and throw. Clinton Dam is the same way. There's a couple other ones. But most of the fish are in that like super fast water, almost like right below the clam. And there's 12 clams that go across, or there's 10, or whatever. But it always amazed me once I really started to, once I had the equipment to be able to do stuff like that without drowning. I mean, at one time I had the 14-foot John boats with 9 nines on it. Well, that's what you don't do. What I'm talking about with that. That's Sean and I call that dive boats, and I have actually rescued people trying to do that type of stuff. And sometimes I have to stop and tell people not to follow me. I'm like, do not try to do what I am doing.
Yeah, do what I
don't want to rescue you. Exactly. You got somebody in a 14-foot John boat, and they got more gear than they know what to do with, and they both weigh 350 pounds apiece, and there's more weight in beer than there is in sinkers in the boat, and then they try to anchor sideways, and I just tell them, don't do that. And matter of fact, I have told people not to do it, and they tell me, we've been doing it for years, and then you see their stuff floating downriver, and the cop, the water police are picking them up.
Right
underneath the dam. It's a shame,
right.
But it happens. Yeah. So
outdoors.
Thanks, Brett. I guess I don't know. I think there's better people to look up than me. But so let's look at July again. Usually, when I used to fish lakes in July, I would focus deep, but I would also focus more at night than I would focus deep while it was light out. But I also would, just like the same thing with topographical maps, some sort of cover, maybe some old trees that they left in the water, maybe some big boulders, maybe some riprap, but anything that had deep water with shallow water close to it. So catfish are lazy. They don't love. I mean, even though blues will move, blues are highly migratory and they'll move long distances. But big flatheads, they don't love to be that far away from their hunting haunts if they need to go. They would prefer to be, and that's how I locate giant flatheads in rivers, is because they like to stay where bait fish intersect with them by habitat, not because there's bait fish there. Because if they had to constantly think about, where's the bait fish, well, they're off the mark. So if you're a truly giant flathead, you prefer the right current, the right depth, and the right cover, which bait fish inhabit that anyway. And it's only about 2 to 10% of the river. So it's really not, once you get dialed into it, it's really not that hard. I can go into almost any river, and then, from Minnesota all the way down to, North Carolina, it doesn't really matter, and find flatheads. Now, am I going to find the biggest flatheads? No, that's going to take me a while. I'm going to have to cancel out small fish type stuff, because some things to the eye don't necessarily look that great to flatheads, if you get what I mean.
No, thank you.
They're in there. It looks great to me, but as soon as I sit up on it, I go, I'm catching 4 to 12 pound flatheads, not 30 to 40 pound flatheads, and go, okay, I'm gonna take a look at that again. Especially if it's in my home range, I'm going to take a look at it again in different water levels. But let's just say the water's a little bit lower and slower. There may not be big flatheads on it, even though it looks good. Maybe it comes in at 9 feet of water and just sort of jumps down into 15 like that, and currents bouncing off the bank. There's a nice crease, and then you've got one tree, root ball intact, and all that stuff. It looks great. With a little bit lower water, the big flatheads don't like it because they can't ambush bait fish right, and the little flatheads have taken over. But get another foot and a half of water, and all of a sudden here come the big flatheads in there. So I have kind of trained myself to be able to understand water level, water flow, and what that looks like, to where I can look at it and say, yeah, I think there's big fish in there, or I think 20 25 pounds, because we'll go play, especially when I was a guide. There'd be guys that were fishing different parts of the country, and they're like, well, why don't we fish that one? I said, we can fish that if you want to catch like 20-pound fish and under. And they're like, no. They're like, how do you know that? I said, well, for one, I fished it enough, and two, there's not enough current on that to actually hold them. Let's go over here where it's more likely to catch a 50, 60, 70, or 80. Now, I'm not saying it was likely to catch an 80, but I did catch several a year while I was guiding for flatheads. But that's another thing about flatheads, is that you have to be on the water a lot if you expect to be able to catch the giants, because the giants don't eat every day. So you're going to have to, be 3, 4, 5 days a week on the water, because that one day, and it's really difficult. Sorry, I'm rambling, but it's really difficult for weekend guys, because I am one now. I know how difficult it is, because when I was doing it 5 times a week, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, you could be there at the right time. Because if they don't need to feed but once or twice a week, what's the odds that it's going to hit Saturday night when you're there?
Yep.
It's very, very small odds. But if you could, drop in that spot for 15 minutes every day for 5 days, and one day you catch a 50, or one day you catch a 60, or you catch a 70, or you get lucky enough, one Tuesday afternoon right before a storm hits you and hit an 85.
Right.
That's just the nature of it.
Right.
But so to get to that, there's 90% of the river that do not hold giant flatheads already. So you got to be able to pick out the right areas and the right spots that's going to hold big ones. And then you got to milker on it. You got to go, okay, I have fished this spot 5 times during this water, and this water, and it doesn't hold big fish, or it doesn't seem to hold big fish. So I'm going to cross it off my list. I'm going to go on. And then I'm going to say, okay, if I've caught a 40 here, I'm going to put that on my list. And I used to even say, I'm going to put this on my list if it's even 25s, because at some point it may be attractive enough for a 50 to be in there. And then, after a while, yeah, you end up narrowing down your spots, but yet you're spending quality time every single time you go with the baits in their face, and you just hope that you're going to be there at the right day.
Right. So if you're hitting these spots, 5 times a week, and when that 10-day weather pattern comes out, and okay, I'm going to hit this spot 5 times this day, and that weather comes out, and you see there's a front coming on Saturday, how many days prior for you are you looking to hit that spot before a cold front or a warm front?
I might hit it a couple times. It does depend. Like when I was guiding, I would guide on the Rock Island pool. I would focus up in the morning, up close to the upper third. Then by the afternoon, we'd take out and we'd go down to the middle. And then the next day, I would focus on the middle and then go down to the last 2/3. And then I would skip and jump because you can't just beat up on your spots every day. But right. If I had some spots that I could visit, and I didn't catch much yesterday, and I didn't catch much today, if it didn't take me too much time, I'm going to visit again, because that's 3 days, and I know there's fish there, because if I didn't catch any fish, it's too good a spot to not hold a giant. So sometimes that 3rd or 4th time I hit it, and everything else just kind of, I'd already caught fish here, but I didn't catch it there, then I would hit that 140 or 50. My clients are happy and they're dancing a jig in the boat, and then I'm off to different spots. But one thing I did have to do is I couldn't let's just say the bite's great and I could catch 20 flatheads in a single trip. Well, that almost ruined it for next day if I was still fishing the same spot. So I would have to rotate spots. I'd have to say, okay, I've got 15 spots that I'm going to focus on throughout this whole thing. And so 2 hours if I spent 2 hours, that'd be 30 hours. Well, I wouldn't. I'd spend 15 minutes here, but I'd spend 25, 30, 35, 40 minutes in other spots. And then maybe I'll hit the fronts of barges on my way, because it's kind of increasing current. So But I will tell you one thing. I average 30 to 50 baits a day consistently, no matter what. Whether I hit 15 or 20 spots, whether I had to hit 30 spots to do it, whether I had to do some other patterns, like the catfish grid or the flathead chess is what I used to call it, where we're firing baits and we're doing stuff and we're fishing bridges and we're fishing too tight to cover and you're losing a lot of baits, blah blah blah. But I mean, it is what it is, and sometimes you just gotta just kind of fire it up
Right.
and do what you can to get the most fish in the boat, which by attrition, you're going to actually put enough baits in front of monsters to catch those one or two big ones. And that's one thing I didn't understand when I was real young. I was like, man, I'm going to wait this fish out. Well, I ended up wasting too much time. Now I know when to wait a fish out and when not to. The other thing, what you talked about as far as that storm front, there are times if I knew a storm front was coming in a day, I would not fish a certain spot that it was known to hold 50 to 80 pound fish, not fish it at all except for right before, because I had done it and done it and done it. And every once in a while you do. But there in 2006, we had a whole lot of storm fronts come through, like oppressive storm fronts get just poured on as soon as they got there. And we ended up catching fish over 50 pounds within that, before the front got there, within 5 minutes almost every time. So I noticed that as a thing somehow. And so I've been able to take
Even
advantage of
darker.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've noticed even out here, as far as even our lake channels, you know, some of our best fishing is 10 minutes before the storm hits you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we can sit out there all day, nice hot sunny weather, and we might get a few taps here, a few taps there, but 10 minutes before you're getting smacked with that storm, every rod you got out there is going crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
uh,
Yep. Did when they get fired up, they get fired up.
they do,
And
they do.
years ago, I was so fired up about things because when I first started not when I first started fishing, but by the time I started to get good at it, I felt more like I could I could make fish bite at will. Okay, because I'm really focused on their haunts during the day, and I'm putting it in their face. But the older I've gotten, the more I have realized that it's not just that. It's the fact that I was super fired up. I was willing to anchor 50 times a day and throw. If I'm throwing six rods 6 or 8 times, 50 anchors a day, just marching down a thing. And then it helped that it was pre-spawn, especially during the day. Anytime you can focus during the day, pre-spawn. And then I would wonder, what is the problem when I got to July and August? So then I learned that, okay, even though I'm putting it in their face, even though I'm putting a lot of anchors in and I'm testing a lot of waters and I'm throwing a lot of bloody baits and I'm doing all this stuff, it's just sometimes you just can't get, especially blue cats. Flatheads, I can kind of, actually more than blue cats, I can get a big flathead to bite by pissing them off, but I can't seem to get a blue cat. Even if I throw a bait that is the most luxurious looking thing you ever saw, and it's bloody and it's stinky, and if that's what they like, and it's fresh and it's whatever, but yet you chunk that thing right down in front of their face, and during the day they might bite it, they might pull it down a little bit, and then that's it. And I know this because there's been many times, and even Sean can attest, that we do that. We find them during the day. They're there. They're Volkswagens right there. I mean, just 4 and 5 foot fish. You throw a nice bait, they'll like just sort of test it. They just can't help it. They just got to bite it a little bit and pull it down. But that's the only two fish down there. There's two fish. You get two bites.
Right.
And it happens within 15 minutes, and you go, well, maybe some other fish moved in. You go scan it again, it's the same two fish, and you go, okay, well, what am I going to have to do? Well, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get above them. I have to wait them out until that witching hour, and I'm going to hope that they come my way instead of go sideways or go downriver. And see, that's another thing. Lake, You, oh, yes, in a river, you've got two basic directions that they're going to move. They're basically going to move up. They're going to move down. Now they can move sideways and all this stuff, but in a lake, holy moly, that's a 360. So it is really difficult. You're going to have to think more of bait fish, think more on where you're going to go. You're going to have to predict where that fish is going to be next. And we do a certain amount. All of us river guys do, whether we're on the bank or whether we're on boats. We do a certain amount of predicting where they're going to be next. But it is so much easier for boat guys in a river to determine where fish are going to be because you got current, you got depth, you got cover, and you can move.
Right.
Now, when I was on shore, it wasn't. I wasn't so lucky. Power plant lake, you just got to hope a fish kind of stumbles onto you.
Right. So we've got, let's see, lost it here. Okay, so we got Kyle. He's asking, what about barometric pressure? How does that play a part?
I like low pressure. Every once in a while, you'll have the weird high pressure days that just kick ass. I don't know why. Nobody seems to know why. I remember several trips where it's bluebird skies, barely a cloud in the sky, and we caught like 16 flatheads a day, biggest 62 pounds. Second biggest is like 51. Third biggest is 40. I mean, just Katie bar the door. But that is not the norm. I prefer, it was pre-spawn. It was like June 6th when we did that well. For some reason, they were just on it. But most of the time, I prefer cloudy during the pre-spawn. I don't prefer cold during pre-spawn. You get a cold snap during pre-spawn, and all of a sudden, it will kind of neutralize a good bite. You get that where that water temperature is just trickling up, maybe and the level's doing really good. It's sort of cloudy, but yet it's still warm. And I'll take even sunny. As long as it's not like high barometric pressure. I prefer low pressure, but yeah, I've done good on blues and high pressure too. But it's more of a rarity.
Right. So I guess while we're covering all our weather phases and everything, I know there's a handful of people in here that are pretty religious to the moon phases.
Yep.
Does the moon phase play a part in where where you pick a spot, how you fish, whether you're fishing depth, deep,
100%.
shallow?
100%. Matter of fact, I put up a TikTok video that got like 80,000 views. And it was just me in the kitchen right here talking about what I thought about the moon phase. And I'm very comfortable saying that you can take it to the bank that on a natural river situation where there's not a lot of lights. Now, let's just throw out all that other stuff. But if you're in a river that's usually dark, if there's no moon, it's kind of out of the way, and it's fairly clear water. If you're fishing 15 foot and less, it's really difficult to catch really big fish during a full moon. Once the moon gets above the trees and starts shining on the water, I mean that is like clockwork. And I have fished the Mississippi from Wisconsin all the way down to St. Louis for flatheads. Now, not that you can't catch fish. I mean, but I'm talking about 45, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60 type fish. Uh, uh, and there's no absolutes in fishing, but I have learned that once that moon's up, because I've stayed and stayed and stayed and moved, worked it, and it's very difficult to catch big fish after that moon shines on the water. Now, but that's a natural river situation where fish have the luxury of bait fish coming to them. If you're in a canal system, if you are in a lake system that flatheads have to get up and move no matter what, and they have to take advantage, it's anybody's guess. But, the basic behavior of flatheads is I don't even like to shine light on the water at all. I just don't. And we do know one thing, like if you get into like coal mine in the Canarias situations where you almost like any scientific studies done, you have to eliminate most of your outliers first, and then you have to get into a basics. And we actually live really close to a basic there really isn't a whole lot of guesswork to it because it is stable all the time. It almost gets no more. It's almost the same level water all the time. Okay, but yet you shine the light on that water. You put a Coleman lantern that's touching that water at all, and you could kiss your bites goodbye. It will never happen. It's 4 to 6 foot deep. Not all that clear, but yet if you have a light that is shining the water, you will not get any bites. And we have proved it over and over and over and over again. Same thing with the moon. As soon as the moonlight hits the water, the bite's done. You might catch a 5 pounder, you might catch a 6 pounder, you might catch a 12 pounder. You're not going to catch a 40 or 50. Here's
Right.
Parker. Yep, yep. Horrible after the moon cleared the horizon. Absolutely. And we all, I like to give it the benefit of the doubt. I like to think that I'm still open to learning. And so I'm not going to stay home on a full moon. It just proves it time and time again. I mean, you can't catch them in the kitchen. And I'm a weekend guy now. I mean, I have no choice sometimes. I got to go whether it's a full moon or not. I just go, oh gosh, it's a full moon. That just kind of cut our time down. But we'll still stick it out and give it our best shot. And it's very rare. But yet, when there's a dark moon, I can catch 280s and a 70 on a single anchor.
Right.
But yet, when the moon's up, I'll struggle to catch a 20 after the moon's up. Blackout, no moon. I love no moon.
Dark nights, high water is your favorite. Joe caught his PB and blackout, no moon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in a lake, we've had our best nights, complete pitch black.
Yep.
I
agree with that. And like there's no absolutes in fishing, and you get so many catfishermen fishing so many different things. Somebody's gonna come up and say, hey, I caught an 80 pounder in 3 foot of water with a full moon shining on it, and I dropped my flashlight in the water and I caught it on a banana.
Right.
With my daughter's Snoopy rod. And you go, okay, all right. But it's those things. I mean, and I feel like I can speak of it intelligently because I've been doing this for 35 years as scientifically as I can. And at one time I had so many hours on the water. I wouldn't say nobody else did, but I don't think there was too many catfishermen that were chasing giants as much as I did that hard for that long. I mean, I would just leave the house and not come back for 14 days.
Right.
I would sleep on islands. I stayed in the boat 3 days in a row. I was an absolute ate up lunatic at one time. But once you get kids and all that, the wives kind of frown on that stuff.
Yeah, it's trying to go through here. Joe hit the wrong box. Alyssa says that's her life goal.
Yeah, I'm telling
Yeah,
you,
Alyssa's a pretty.
if you can afford it, if you can do it, it's a beautiful life. It really is because, you just don't worry about anything else.
Right.
I mean,
Parker
Sean's probably still in here. He used to go catch bait before work and have his bait bucket right there beside him, during his work day, and he'd be off to the canal every single night. I mean,
right.
when it takes a hold of you, I mean, and I say big catfish obsession quite a bit, but that's what it is.
Yep. Parker makes a good point. I mean, all of us are clearly on TikTok. We're on stream a little bit. If you're doing live streams, always try to set your lights facing away from water, pointing up, especially in a dark moon. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, even if you're fishing with a full moon,
Yep.
Any man-made light is always going to cast weird lighting into the water, weird shadows.
Yep.
Anything.
Now, if you're in an area that already has light, like a dock light and all this stuff,
right.
I don't think it really affects them because it's a Pavlovian dog response. They get used to it. They get used to it. They get used to it. I mean, that's not the thing. But if you're going to a normally dark area that you feel like they're going to come up and hunt, yeah, you probably shouldn't shine a light in the water.
Right.
I mean, Somebody said something about Santee Cooper rig in the winter. I do like that in slower water because I focus on fast water in the summer in the warm water period, but I focus on that interim in the colder water period. And honestly, I don't really in the last couple of years, I really haven't fished a bunch in the wintertime because I'm so busy with work and blah blah blah. But when I used to do it, yes, I would be instead of on the outside of the wing dike in that main fast current, I would be more to the inside and they're actually more apt to sort of hover and suspend in the wintertime than they are in the summertime. I mean, although they'll do it, but it just seems to be more prevalent.
Right. Let's see where to go. Tom, how about reservoirs with no current? What about it, Tom? What part are you wanting to know? There's our fourth. Okay, while we're waiting on him, I know Alyssa, was it Alyssa up here? Yeah, Alyssa asked, what about blue lights on the side of the boat at night?
I turn mine off.
You turn yours off?
I do.
I use red.
But what's that?
I use red.
Yeah. Well, I'm old and superstitious too, so I mean,
so I've got
maybe it's not a big deal.
Right. So I've got green lights on the side, but I've got them pointed upward. So they don't shine down in the water, but they do shine up at the poles. I guess I haven't noticed a huge difference. I mean, the last year was rough before we put them on, and it was still rough after. So I mean, I guess I can't fully say whether the green, even pointed up, hurts them. What's up, real man? How you doing tonight?
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Sean and I will go completely dark. If it's a tough bite, we'll go completely dark. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, 15, 20 minutes into being completely dark, here comes the monsters. And we're in the monster spot already. It's not just because we shut them off. Here they come. But I honestly think sometimes they're just a little wary of it. And maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Maybe it's me overthinking stuff. And maybe if I just, waited a little bit longer, we'd catch, a bunch of 50s, 60s, and 70s with the light on. But I've still never had it happen.
Right. Okay, so Tom's question is, what areas would we all target in a lake? Timber, humps, shallow flats, etc.
All the above. I mean, really, in a lake, they can be almost anywhere. But when I used to fish them for exclusively for monsters, I would try to find and people call them creek mouths. I used to call them coves. We have a lot of like Corps of Engineer lakes that were built in the 70s, and they still had standing timber up in the coves and all that stuff. And then so I would focus on the creek channel that came out. So you might have a flat that comes in and then just kind of drops, maybe even just a little bit. Even though when they first built them, in the 70s, they were fairly steep, but now they're kind of silted in. But just that 1 or 2 foot drop is good. One thing I did learn is that while targeting fish, catfish in lakes, I would use a lot of slip floats. And that means I would be downwind side, I would anchor the boat or be on shore, cast it, and I would set that. Let's just say I knew that the ledge was sitting at 4 feet down. It's sitting at 32 feet. So I would set a slip float at 32 feet, cast it into the deeper water, let it go down, and then let the wind sweep it over, and it was perfect. So you couldn't set it up any better. Same thing happens in, it works in farm ponds. If it's a weed line, it happens on ledges. And I actually do it on the river too, because I'll throw 90 degrees with a weight that is like this, see that? So that it will actually literally drag along until it finds that lip that's coming up, and I'll let enough slack out. You guys all see me demonstrate that at CatCon. But I'll cast 90 degrees, let a whole bunch of slack out so that it finds those lips, because it's impossible to get on that. You could even go over where they're at, and that the rise might not even be 6-8 inches, but those big blues will follow that. So if I'm in the middle of no man's land, it is harder for them to find it, because if you think about it, stuff that tumbles down river, and especially it'll get caught in those little bitty rises or drops or highways. And so I will target that specifically. So I'm doing the same thing with a slip float. So you got your float, it's coming down like this, the wind blows it in and it contacts that ledge or that rise or that weed line or that whatever. It's impossible to hit, but you've just did the impossible by doing that. But you got to be able to triangulate it, and sometimes you got to have you got to be really willing to do like really innovative anchors, if you get what I mean. You know, sometimes you got to triangulate and tie up and do whatever. But you know, these are the days of dragging and basically using your trolling motor to spot lock you and all that stuff. So I mean, that's amazing in itself. But that's I don't really do it. Do it? I don't think I would. Not where I fish, because you go 10 feet, you're in a snag for one on the Mississippi, and for two, I don't hardly ever catch fish, even if I'm throwing it in their face, like really big ones. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't really catch really big ones within 5 minutes, let alone 30 seconds. So if I'm dragging baits past a monster, I think it goes right by them, and that's it. Now, have people caught monsters? Sure, but they, as soon as I see guys dragging and drifting, they're catching multiple monsters, like what I consider a monster, 70, 80, 90, 100. If they are being successful at that, or bumping, or suspend dragging or whatever, when I see that, I might consider it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Right.
Now, but a lot of the guys that are doing it are tournament guys, and I even said this in one of my videos not too long ago. They have to put fish in the boat. I don't. I can go fishless for a while, just to wait on a monster or two, or not even catch one. That's not my objective. So I can't speak bad about it. I can just say that's why I don't do it.
Right. Catfish. So would bank seekers do the same thing? Are you talking as far as hooking onto the ledges, catfish? Jaws, and I don't know if light makes a difference. I think it's the luck of the draw, of the hunger of the fish. I don't know. I think a lot of light plays a pretty big role in it. Let's see.
Shimmer humps, shallow flats, yep, all the above. If lights make a difference, I think it's the luck of the draw. Well, what up, Big Mike? So Big Mike has a YouTube channel, and he's quite the big cat. He fishes the Tennessee, and he shore fishes, and he uses kind of the same mantra that I do. He fishes generally deep water. He uses the current to kind of peg it against ledges. He uses pretty big baits, long rods. Then he's pretty, for a shore guy. He beats up on the big fish. Let me tell you something. So I mean, but that's about a 2-pound sinker that I use, and I don't know if there's a lot of people that use these, something that big, because I mean here's a 12 that'll show you the scale, and then I use a lot of 10s. I use them like this, but I mean we're fishing such ferocious current that I need something like this to keep a rod perpendicular in the field. Yeah. And a lot of times this won't even keep it perpendicular. Like in 40 foot, I've got the rod at the front of the boat, and the bait's at the back of the boat straight down with only 50-pound test.
Yeah, I fish the Missouri River, and we use about 2 pounds to keep it straight down.
Yeah.
So, somebody asked up below above. I can't find it now. Someone asked, "What about noise on a boat?"
I'm not as particular with noise because I used to have I still do. I have a 1,000-gallon tank in the garage, and I used to do studies while I was in college. So I would throw like 5 or 6 giant channel cats in there, and I would sneak up on them and kick the tank. And yeah, they do this, but they don't go like super crazy. So noise seems to affect them in a very short amount of time. I mean, just, and you can see blues, flatheads don't even wiggle. I have 3 50-pound flatheads in that 1,000-gallon tank with current and a big biological filter and all that stuff. And I could literally try to poke them with like a broom handle, and they would literally bite the broom handle sometimes. Not all the time. Sometimes they just move, but they would literally bite it. And you know what? It scares the crap out of you every time. And you know it's coming, but it still scares you. You're like, oh, geez, because you can hear it, you can feel it. It's in a 1,000-gallon plastic tank, and you can feel their bite through the water into the concrete and up your feet. It's crazy. So powerful.
Parker throws 16-ounce fairly regular off the wing dams.
So Parker will appreciate this. This is my new hook.
There it is
right here. This is exactly what I want right here. Now I'm going to compare that.
Randy, are you in here?
I'm going to compare that with a. I think this is a 12-aught. So that's a 12-aught right here. So let's put it in here, and I'll tell you why I want this. I may be the only person on the planet that really wants it. So, but I have some giant fish that I target with regularity, and when they don't turn, and when they do turn, let's just say they've got this 12-aught right here, or 13-aught or whatnot. I usually end up catching them in the corner of the mouth, just barely. I mean, just see how the thumb barely fits through there like this?
Yep.
Well, you get a fish that has a girth that big and that fast a current. I have lost quite a few when they get hooked in the side of the mouth. The other thing, when they come up and hit, and all they do is back up, it can't get around their bottom jaw. Okay, it just doesn't. Yeah. So I know I've had them on for a little bit, and then they pop right off, because all they're doing, they come up and get the bait, and then they just back up. They curl their tail, back up, and with this, I need something to go around a grown man's wrist. I need the gap to be this big so that it can literally go around your wrist like this. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can see that. Around your wrist like this, and bite into that bottom suitcase right there. And that's what I want. And I've been looking forever. Here's a 16-aught hook, but the wire's too fat and the gap is too narrow. See this little bitty gap?
Yep.
This is a 16-aught saltwater hook, and I just don't love it because they don't always grab it, turn, and go. A lot of times they just back up, and it's the only shot you've got, especially when they're inactive. So there's that one. Another one over here. And this makes a lot of sense for like tuna and stuff, but it just doesn't make that much sense for catfish unless they're turning and burning. But I mean, shoot, this thing is it's too thick.
Right.
You know, that barb is too huge. The ones I do catch on it, I've had them come off of this particular hook, even though I'll use it when I'm fishing places that you guys will never see me fish on TikTok or YouTube, because that's the only time I really need to get these monster hooks. And so there's my trailer. So, I mean, it's like 20 inches apart. But the only reason I need to do it is because there are some areas that have a number of 20 to 40 pounds from actually getting on my lines, because the giant fish almost never hit first. So I end up wasting all my time. I'm mucking up the area with 20 to 40 pound fish. And you just never catch the two giants that you've marked amidst the other 40 fish. By the time you catch all those other ones, and you go, where did the giants go? Well, they just ended up leaving because their baits were never there long enough for them, because they can eat whenever they want.
I do have to say, I think you're probably the only one in here that would pass up a 40-pound fish.
Yeah, I'd pass up a 40-pound fish, but I'm spoiled like that. I've been doing it a long time. We don't even we don't take pictures of 40-pound fish anymore. I mean, that sounds kind of conceited, but we don't. We just don't. We're like, eh.
So Catfish asked, she made a good point while you're talking about your hook. Is the theory of a catfish and being able to feel the hook, does that make a difference? And then Fat Cat asked, straight shank or circle or offset?
This is a straight shank. I prefer straight shank because I feel that offsets go into the eye socket a lot. I mean that, and see how this see how the eye is actually this way. It's set towards the hook. You will find none of them. They're either straight or they're back. I want it just about 22.5 degrees forward, because when I do a no knot, that is going to put this at a super tilt like that. And that's what I like. I like that super tilt because that will, I mean, that, for me, this would be awesome. I would dance a jig if I could get some of those. I wouldn't always use them because when, honestly, when Sean and I are alive, we still have to have some numbers. I mean, I try not to catch a bunch of 20s or whatever, but if we do, that's fine because it keeps the action going as we're waiting for the monsters to get there. But we still try to prevent the 20s by using, I mean, you've seen my videos. I mean, gigantic stuff that's like size of a softball or catcher's mitt or whatever.
Yeah. Roger says, it's only 40 pounds.
True. I mean, we still like them, but when the goal is to catch 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100s. I mean, we caught 100. My son caught 111 pounder in the boat this year on a live. So yeah, I think that's pretty good odds. And Sean lost a couple of giants last year. I've never heard a grown man make those kind of noises when that happened. But, I mean, because we knew what he had. Yeah, don't ask me about flatheads in winter. No. I've already been through that.
Right.
Yeah.
Been looking for that honjo for 25 years. Right.
Well, Mike, all you got to do is show up to St. Louis every weekend in the month of August, and we'll pick you up. And that'll turn into 1 or 2 years. There has been years when I didn't catch a 100-pound fish, but there's been a lot of years when if I was able to fish the month of August, 2 days a week, usually we'll put a 100-pound fish in the boat or two. Shoot, I had one anchor where the small fish was 40. We had several in the 50-pound class. Had some high 70s, had a 90, and we had 2 100-pound, and one was well over 100, probably in the 135, 140-pound range. One anchor.
The big fish.
Yeah.
Is that the one on TikTok?
No, I've actually caught bigger than the one on TikTok before, as far as girth and length. But there are some pictures of them on TikTok, but to get the reality of a fish in a picture is a lot harder than in a video, because in a video you get to see them, do all the things. In a picture, it's just one massive, gigantic fish.
Right. I
do have 2 fish that are 100 pounds on video, but it's on old VHS tape that was shot in like those old home cameras that were like this big. And I still haven't figured out how to convert it to digital. I want to, though. And we're young savages making fun of each other, cussing, smoking, doing all. I don't know how to put it on social media, but I'll figure it out one of these days.
Right. Hell, anymore. The way you guys were back then, I don't know if it would pass the guidelines anymore.
Probably not.
So, catfish.
I'd probably have to. I'd have to silence it and edit some things. Yeah.
Yeah. Catfish says she don't want to say her PB. Y'all make me look like bait.
Hey, a PB's a PB. I mean, my PB at one time was 5 pounds. So remember that. Right. I mean, shoot, I caught a 20 and I thought it was the biggest thing in the world. I mean, granted that was 14, but But then again, I'm not one of them spoiled gay kids. I didn't just walk out my back door onto the Tennessee River. I didn't walk down the back of my yard onto a dock. I had to work for that. I had to
Right.
find things. I mean, I had to spend thousands and thousands of hours to catch that 20, and to finally catch a 40, and then to finally catch a 45. And oh yeah, there's a lot of work and a lot of money involved and a lot of time.
Right.
It is
I
the
see,
size of
I
the
see a lot of
excitement.
people here. I see a lot of people on here and on YouTube. They go around and they just complain that, I wish I could catch a 40, or I wish I could catch a 60. Well, half the problem is, they're on the other side of that phone, more than likely sitting on their couch typing.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
can't catch them sitting on your couch.
And you know what?
It takes lots of hours.
Everybody watching this has the same opportunity as everybody else.
Right.
This depends on how much effort they're gonna put into it.
Right.
And
Roger, exactly. If you want the reward, you got to put in the work.
That's right. That's right.
If you want to, what's up, Dave? If you want to catch 3-4 pound channels, sure, go out to your local pond on the weekends, no problem.
And it depends on how important it is to you. Because
exactly.
I mean, honestly, I don't expect that people would think that giant fish are as important to them as it is to me. I mean, everybody's different. And you know what? I don't look down at if somebody's PB, if they're catching 20s and they're happy with it, I'm happy for them. I really am. I don't look down on anybody else's fish. I gauge my own success based on me, and that's it. That's all.
Right.
Because I think fishing's a wonderful thing. I really like the beauty in it and all that stuff. But yet, get me in monster waters, and I notice almost nothing. I am so focused. I'm a focused, success-oriented psycho, and I'm telling you, like if you guys watch our TikTok stuff, we're usually just a ball of fun and laughs and slapping each other's fish and doing all and high-fiving. Well, what you don't see is when it's tough, and Sean and I are gritting our teeth and talking a little bit, and I'm moving, and we're throwing anchor, and we're gutting it out, and all that stuff. It is not that fun. A lot of people are like, oh man, I want to fish with epic catfish. I'm like, I'm not so sure you do, because it's rough. When the bite's rough, it's rough. Because
right.
I'm constantly grinding the Rubik's cube constantly, and I'm like, okay, and what if we do this? What if we do? And it's usually in my own mind, but and I'm constantly messing with stuff, and it's time to re-anchor, and look at there's Creole right now. So if
what's going on,
if anybody knows how difficult it is in 9-mile-an-hour current and a 40-pound anchor in 55 foot of water with 200 feet of anchor rope out, and Sean throws it, and it ain't quite right, and we spent 15 minutes on the spot, and I go, Sean, it's time to anchor up. He's like, okay, he's going to anchor up, but man, I'm telling you, he don't like it. I used to grind because I didn't have as good a rope back in those days. We had like the chintzy
What's going on,
rope.
Steve?
I used to wear my hands down to where I didn't even want to touch anything after 4 days fishing. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. Let alone
We'll try again.
The fish, because I never carried any gloves in the boat, and here I am hand grabbing freaking 50-pounders and all that stuff. So my hands were so bad but I didn't care back in those days. I'm a little smarter,
right?
A little, not that smart yet.
All right.
So Creel tried to come on up. I'll tell you what. Do you know Creel very good?
I'm learning.
Good dude. Very good dude.
Yep. I've come to learn that Creel, Roger with Muskrat are some pretty good guys.
Yep, they are.
I'm getting to know Jamie and Rebecca over at Carolina Lakes pretty well. Ryan and Chris, and they're all starting to become like family to me. And
nice.
So let's see. Did we miss anything here at the end? Big Mike says bait fishing is just as important as trophy cat as fishing.
Parker's got that figured out. Donkey strength help with the hand pain. They do. That's our code word for it.
All right, let's see where we're at. We're coming up on our hour and a half. Anybody in the chat have questions that we didn't cover? I know somebody asked bait for blues in the wintertime.
Oh, yes. I do prefer softer baits. I also like baits that have more to do with nutrients, if you get what I mean. I prefer the headpiece, especially on a decent sized shad. And if y'all watch my other stuff, I'm usually throwing, really big, robust baits.
Yep.
Wintertime, I'll put it down to like half of that, or even a quarter of that. Maybe I'll take a 9-inch gizzard shad and cut him, just a few rib cages down, just so that some of those shad guts are still in there, but the eyeball's still intact, the brain's still in there, and they're all kind of gooey and slimy and all that stuff. But yet I'll kind of ignore the ass end piece. I do know that catfish, when the water's cold, they don't need to eat that much. So you want to have something that their body craves, and the only way for catfish to get certain nutrients is actually by the stomach contents of the fish that they eat. Think about that. They're almost like lizards or anything else. If you deprive them of things, if they were only to eat, just say if you expected a catfish to live on just shrimp, just plain old shrimp like you eat at the store, they would soon have problems. Especially if it didn't have the shell on it, because they need keratin, they need iron, they need magnesium, they need all that stuff. And it's not present in just flesh. They have to eat what the fish has in their stomach. They have to eat what's in their eyes. They have to eat what's in the brains. They have to eat the gills. They have to eat, calcium. They have to eat what's the other one? So and I've seen it with my own eyes when you can put live shad in with giant channel cats and put them in that 1,000-gallon tank in the winter, and they're still full, but they'll go up and pop a shad. Pop that thing. They'll suck the guts out and spit the rest. Done. So they've taken 25 shad that you kept alive from the river, dumped those in there, and by the afternoon, all the guts are gone, but yet the bodies are just laying in the middle, where whatever. It's a real thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Parker says catfish family's awesome. It's a awesome bunch of people. Fat Cat, anyone use Asian carp for baits?
I have.
I have as well.
I don't love it, but I've had some great anchors on it for some reason. And usually when it's on, or it's off, it's off. It's kind of almost no in between.
Yeah, here in the Missouri River, it seems to be a hot bait August through September.
Andrew, opinion on fishing high rivers before or after the crest?
I prefer before the crest. I actually like a steady rise. I don't like anything that goes up high or crashes down, because and here's my explanation. I've never been able to talk to the fish, but I suspect that it is part of their fight or flight mechanism. So since they are creatures that are dependent on their survival mode, when that water is going like completely up, it doesn't seem that they're on a big feed. If it kind of dribbles up nice and slow, it seems like they're on a good feed. But as soon as it starts to go down, it seems that they go off the feed and begin transitioning from shallow water to deep water, because it's survival. And just is what it is.
Right. Big Mike says, Epic, you are the catfish whisperer.
Well, I wish if I whispered to them, they could whisper back. That would be so much easier. But yeah,
it makes things a whole lot easier. Ethan, what's up, Fat says he's going to try and fish for skipjack shad for bait.
Very, very good bait. We don't have a lot of skipjack in the Mississippi where I'm at. We have some, but we don't have big numbers because the water is very dirty, dinky, and skipjack do really well in that clearer water because they, of what they eat. So we have a lot of moon eye. We have a lot of gizzard shad. We have a lot of, suckers, carp, Asian carp, stuff like that.
Right. So, I mean, here in Nebraska, we don't have. I mean, I can't think we have any skipjack.
You got moon eye though.
Moon eye.
Golden
Um,
eye, yeah.
I would take
Yep.
moon eye over skipjack a lot of times.
right. Shad is a big bait for us. White bass, or some people
White
call it
bass are good.
sand bass. White bass is a big bait
Yep.
for us here. Um, we do well on for flats. We do well on carp and bluegill, and yeah, Ethan alewife.
I got a story about alewife once you get done.
I guess growing up, I always heard people say, use your mud rats or your bullheads for flathead. All right, Roger, have a good night. Thanks for stopping in, brother.
See you, Roger.
And after getting old enough and trying this stuff, I got to reach back and go, okay, growing up, I was always told, try this, try this, try this, try this. Well, when things get tough, you start reaching back and trying this stuff that you were always told to, and it doesn't increase. I can't say I've ever caught a flathead on a bullhead. But you go down and you catch a carp that there's thousands of them right there, and you start catching them like crazy.
I've caught lots of flatheads on bullheads, but I don't prefer them.
Right.
I just don't. Because there's sometimes when you can literally fail with them, and bluegill or a soft fin bait such as a carp, well, a sucker, even not so soft braid fin like a bluegill, or even like a giant shiner will outproduce bullheads. But there are times when bullheads really they excel. Closer to July 4th you get, it seems that in my neck of the woods, it seems that they do better, and it's something to do with maybe the revenge factor of flatheads protecting nests. I don't know.
Yeah, I've always had success with them during the hottest part of the year.
Yep.
Alyssa, who fishes with water dogs?
I would love to, but we don't have any. I mean, we do, but
Me?
I don't have them accessible to me.
Right.
We have very few salamanders here.
She doesn't like that I use them.
Oh, she doesn't like that you use them? Oh, I'd use them. That'd be awesome bait. You know what? I want to fish with like hellbenders that are like 2 foot long.
Right.
Like that big around. I do, like a big giant Mississippi River hellbender. That'd be the craziest bait ever. I might only do it once or twice on film, but if I could catch something on it, that'd even be better.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Max says eel, white perch, and carp are his go-tos. I know I missed it.
Mark not.
Big Mike says a 2-pound live ditch pickle for bait. So when you're using, let's hit that bullhead again. If you're using a bullhead, do you trim the fins? Leave them?
Nope.
Just
I'll tell you why. Trim fins, because I used to keep 30-pound flatheads in a gigantic aquarium. They make a mess and they fight each other, and I'd end up having to clean up water every night, every morning. But it was some of the most awesome stuff in the world. You'd have a 25 and a 30-pound flathead in a 150-gallon aquarium, and they would fight like nobody's business. But yet you could feed them bullheads and just watch them inhale those things. They don't even have a second thought about those spines. I don't trim any of that stuff. The only time I ever trim anything is I feel like usually flatheads are in gentle enough currents that I don't have to worry about that. Now, blues I do. I have to worry about trimming fins, even on cut bait, because I don't want it twisting around and doing all that other stuff. I like it to stay pretty streamlined. But then again, I'm not trimming big sucker fins, because I think they're not going to like them and spit them. Flatheads are savages, dude. They are absolute savages. I had a 5-pound flathead kill a white albino channel cat that I raised from a 6-inch in a 55-gallon aquarium all the way up to 10 pounds. Murdered him in one night, skinned him alive. And I thought, okay, this guy's going to be able to take the abuse of a flathead. Oh no, it was a 5-pound flathead, and he just killed him in one night. Matter of fact, I had caught some bowfin. You know what a bowfin is, right?
Mm-hmm.
A bowfin, pretty tough, kind of armored prehistoric fish. They love those things. I had 2 baby flatheads. I mean, baby flatheads, this big. in a 150-gallon aquarium. One of the short and tall. It was like really tall. It was like 4 foot high, 2.5 feet. But it was this huge aquarium, and they used to hide behind rocks. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll feed them minnows and feed them chubs and feed them whatever. And I had ordered 2 tiger muskies, and I ordered them 14 inches long because the flatheads were only like this long. They're only like 8 inches long. Well, we did okay for about 3 days, and then all of a sudden, I couldn't find my tiger muskies. They were awesome. You could throw a minnow in there, and they'd kill them and dart and eat chubs and all this stuff. Well, the flatheads folded them in half both one night. One had one had the other, and the tail was sticking out their mouth, and so was the head, like this. And they folded them in half and had them jammed in their bellies. That's how badass a flathead is.
Yeah, jeez. So, all right. Well, anybody else in there have
Freddie?
Questions? Freddie's here.
Yeah, we got a whole bunch of YouTube guys. Love it.
What do you think about catfish for catfish?
I've done it. I don't love it. I have caught some 40 and 60 pound, sometimes I'll have to take little channel cats. Like, okay, let's just say I go down to my little river and I'm fishing for suckers. And suckers are tough, and carp are tough, and I catch a couple small channel cats. Well, guess what? The small channel cats are going in the live well, because I have a 128 quart cooler that I have an aquarium pump, and so I try to use them last. But if I have no resort, I might fillet one and use the fillet and all, and I've caught them on channel cats, but I just don't love to do it. I'm not a big fan of the sucker mouth fish. I'll use them for bait all day, but when it comes to channel cats, or I don't care about bullheads, but it'd be like using a flathead for bait. I'm not even using a 6-inch flathead for bait. Just not doing it.
Right. So, all right, guys, we are right at our hour and a half for our show. Tim, thank you for coming in. It's been awesome talking to you.
Yeah, it's been a good time.
And I think a lot of guys learned some lessons here. If you want to hang out, I'm going to stay online a little bit and chat with some folks. If you want to hang out, I'm going to go ahead and open up the boxes if anybody wants to hop in and chat. We're going to be on for a little while yet. If you don't want to stick around, I think that's it for tonight.
Yeah, what time is it? 9:45. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'll hang out. Get a bunch of people in here. If they, I'll kind of be quiet.
Right.
Maybe ask some questions myself.